On air. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome everyone to the largest, fastest growing, and the most active global community of organizational design and product-centric development called Large Scale Scrum. Um, we have a special guest today that I would like to announce. Her name is Cherie Silas. She's an ICF Master certified coach, as well as an accredited supervisor and master coach. And she's also well known at the Scrum Alliance because she's a certified enterprise and team coach and the instructor for ICF Coaching Education, as well as IC Agile and Scrum Alliance. Cherry is the director of education and coaching at Tandem Coaching Academy, the company that she co-owns with a colleague and partner. And her focus is on developing the next generation of Agile coaches and professional coaches. Please keep yourself mute. Her goal is to bring the worlds of professional agile coaching closer together so coaches and clients alike can reap the benefits of the most effective, impactful, and sustainable change possible. Without any further ado, I would like to pass the baton over to Cherie, and she'll tell you more about herself as she sees fits, as well as she will kick off with today's session. And I do kindly ask everyone to keep your mics off and your cameras on if you can. Use the chat window and be respectful and kind to everyone. So with that, Cherie, please take it away. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm looking forward to being here today and working with you. And I would love for this to be a dialogue, not just a one-sided presentation. And so please feel free to ask questions. As Jean said, this is me. I do coaching in organizations and with executive coaches. And a big part of my passion is developing coaches and agile coaches and helping agile coaches to learn more about the professional coaching side of things that can really make the work you do more impactful. And that's really where this topic is birthed from. So, one of the biggest questions that I get when working with other coaches and especially agile coaches is this question about resistance. And they aren't necessarily asking why my client is resisting change. They usually ask, what do you do? How do you handle resistance? And really, one of my responses to that is to discuss, well, why is your client resisting change? Right? Because there could be many reasons why people are resisting change. And we see this in the agile space a lot, right? A company calls and they're like, hey, come help us with our change. And then we get there, and either the leaders are like, I want change, but I don't want to change, right? I want the impacts of change, but I don't want to actually have to change. And then we've got team members and middle managers, and there's often a big resistance to what the coach is trying to help them do. And so I think this is a really important question about, well, why is the client actually resisting change? Um, a big question that I have is, well, are they resisting change or are they resisting you? Because it's often not that they're resisting agile or the things that you are recommending for their best benefit, but they're actually they're resisting you in the way you're doing it. And so a lot of that is what I want to cover today, right? And so um, I'd like to just hear a couple of thoughts, really maybe some brief scenarios of how has resistance shown up for you? How have you seen your clients resisting when you're trying to help them with agile change? And you can feel free to throw that in the group chat, or if one or two of you want to turn on your mic and tell us a little bit about how you've encountered resistance.
This is Tracy. I have had a client group in the past when we were trying to move to a kind of agile operating model. that would have resulted in functional leaders no longer assigning the work, but the work would come from the Agile backlog. And they really resisted not having oversight of the work, plus the expectation that they would have to still manage performance and have inputs into performance management, but not necessarily have visibility to the work, and then funding a resource that wasn't doing work that was within their particular function.
So a lot of the loss of control, right? I don't have the power to control all the things anymore, and that makes me want to resist. Yeah, that often happens. What else? What's another reason you've seen people resist?
Hi, this is Dean. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I think one of the other reasons, based on my experience, that I've seen resistance, or let's say the failure of it, I think is a poor implementation of Agile into a companies, especially companies which don't currently have Agile as a way of working. And then when they are getting ready to introduce it as a way of working going forward, I think sometimes the implementation of the whole Agile program, because it's not done correctly, that causes failure. And the elements which go into that failure is one, the lack of understanding of the need for education on what the whole framework is about. So basically like an Agile overview for the whole company. I think as well having the training in terms of your Scrum Masters, product owners, etc., and setting up the whole Agile organization as well within the company is also another reason that I've observed for failure. And then there are those individuals outright because it's something completely different from the way they've been working before. They simply don't want to change. They're very comfortable in their, let's say they're in their comfort zone, and they don't want to do anything outside of that. So those are kind of like the three things that I've seen.
Right. Thank you. And then Surichi and then Sean, and then we'll move on.
Hello, everyone. So in my past experience, some of the struggle that I have observed is having a lack of clarity towards product vision, maybe lack and lot of unknowns, because of course, product owner and as a Scrum Master also, we are going to ask multiple questions. Okay, how would you like to have this feature? How it would impact, how it would give you the value. So all these questions, and maybe they are not fully aware of it. So that fear of unknowns may bring them to the point like, oh, okay, this process is tedious. We don't know everything upfrontly. So do we really need to have that? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Sean?
Yeah. One thing that I sense a lot of resistance to, and it's attributed to agility, but the inflexibility in which teams do their work, the inflexibility of the process, cumbersome backlog management tools that have very strict thou shall do this or thou shall do that. And it's almost teams must be agile, but don't touch my process. There's a lot of challenge that I've run into there.
Yeah. Yeah. So all common things, right? And so some of the resistance is around not knowing or fear or having incorrect tools or incorrect implementation, right? And often when we come up against resistance, I know as coaches, like we're like, we just want to help you, but we do the same thing that all other humans do, right? When I don't get what I want, I try to like force compliance, right? I'm the boss. I'm going to do it. You're going to do what I tell you to do, or this is how you need to do it. Sometimes even going through well, these people are not listening. I'm going to tell their boss they're not listening. And so their boss can make them listen. right? And so in our attempts to help the client, we actually end up creating more resistance, right? So I've seen many coaches over my years, right? We've got different types of ways of working, right? And I have seen coaches that can be very successful moving very quickly, taking the compliance approach. Right? We're 3, 4, 5 months in, and like everything is different. They're all humming right along. And it seems like the way to go. If I just like kind of brute force things, then they work faster. And that's the way typical managers think too, right? If I just brute force and force people to listen, and if they just have to comply, then it will work. The problem with that is that when you go that route and you're trying to implement change, which includes a change of mindset, you become the forcing mechanism, right? And so when you come in, they do what you say, but then when you leave, they go back to doing what they want, right? And when you leave, or when you leave the company, all those changes that you very quickly were able to make happen, that all just rolls back because the mindset didn't change, and because they actually changed some behaviors or some processes on the outside, but they don't believe in them and they're not bought into them. They're just doing them to keep from getting in trouble. And when the troublemaker, you, us, the coach, leaves, then they just go back to doing what they were doing before. And you've probably also seen this like with managers, right? Yes, we're all in. We'll do exactly what you said. We're going to do this agile thing. And it's all great as long as it's great. But then when something goes wrong, what's the first thing they do? They go back to what they've always done because that works for them, right? And so, and so what our goal is to create sustainable change. And so to help the company to make changes in a way that is going to help them to make real change. And when you're gone, those changes actually stick around, right? And so what I propose is a more invitational approach rather than a compliance approach to change. Now, I want to recognize that as an agile coach, we are not only like asking questions and the client decides all this stuff and we just ask questions, right? If all you're doing is asking questions, then there's no reason for the client to have you there, right? They hired you for your expertise, right? And so as an agile coach, we do need to be able to provide recommendations to them. We also need to help them figure out how to solve their own problems. And there are areas where they know the things to do, and there's areas where we know the things to do, right? And it's the mix of our expertise and their domain knowledge that helps them to be able to figure out what the right thing is and how to implement it in their own organization. But in order for us to work in an invitational manner with our clients doing organizational change, we actually have to, as coaches, think differently. Not just trying to get the client to think differently. You need to think agile. We need to think differently about how we connect with our clients and the work that we're doing so that the client can be long-term successful, not just we were successful in the time we were there, right? We want to start thinking about a different way of approaching organizational change, right? And so some of those different ways is what we're going to be covering in the next few minutes, right? The first is rather than coming in and doing like a assessment of here's all the things you're doing wrong and here's the list of things of ways you should be fixing those, right? You're doing all these things. Instead, what we want to do is extend an invitation to partner, right? We don't want to inflict change on people. Often we're like brought in, hey, here's a coach, go fix them, right? And people aren't bought into us being here. They're like, well, why are you even there? Who said I needed a coach? Why are you trying to fix me? Right? And so you can't get anywhere like that, right? I love in the comments that I need to go convince, I need to get buy-in. I mean, our role long term is not to get buy-in, right? If you think about this, I need to convince the client to do this, or I need to get buy-in. What that means is you're taking your own agenda and you're trying to force them to accept your agenda. What you want to do instead is build a partnership that says, I am actually here to support you and your agenda and help you get to success the way you define it. Right? I might have a definition of success, but I don't own the company. And I don't have to live in this company after I leave. Right? So it's important is that we let the client define success. And we have to recognize that we can't go from 0 to 100 now, right? We've got to make progress along the way. It's okay to have a vision of where we want to get to, but we also can't just start like slapping people around and judging people because they're not where they need to be, right? They know that. That's why you're there, right? And so what we want to build is a partnership with them where we are actually there to support them to get to success the way they define it, even if our version of success is way beyond their version of success, right? We've got to take steps. Any improvement is some improvement. And so we've got to get a little bit at a time and help them to see the value in what we're doing so that they will actually want to make other changes, right? In order to build partnership with them, this is the mindset shift that coaches need to make. And if we look at ICF's definition of coaching, part of their definition of coaching is that as the coach, we see our clients and recognize that our clients are creative, resourceful, and whole, right? So add a little bit to this. I think we need to see as agile coaches that our clients are competent. If we don't believe they are competent to do their job, then we will treat them like they're incompetent. And we will believe that we know everything and they don't. And we're here to fix them, right? We're not actually here to fix our clients. We're here to partner with our clients, right? Think about what it feels like to you when somebody wants to fix you. When they think you don't know what you're doing and they know better what you should be doing, and then they are trying to force you to do things their way. They're trying to fix you, right? Think for a minute. Maybe one of your older siblings or parents or in-laws or your neighbor comes to your house and they look around your house and they're like, I don't really like the way you clean. I don't really like the way your furniture's organized. Don't you know the television is supposed to be over here? Look at the way you're loading the dishwasher. This is not how you load the dishwasher, right? And then they start opening your cabinets. They're like, why are your bowls over here? Your bowls are supposed to be over here. Why are the pots there? They're supposed to be here. Look at your refrigerator. This is not how you organize a refrigerator. How would you react to that? Let me guess, you would love it. And you would be like, oh, yes, you're so right. I'm going to reorganize all of my cabinets. I'm going to change my cleaning supplies. I'm going to reorganize my furniture because you are right and I am wrong. Right? Thank you for coming and giving me this advice I never asked for. How do you think that's going to go over? Right. So let me hear a little bit of thoughts from y'all. If we think of this in the client's perspective, how often have you either been or seen this coach coming in and saying like, you're doing everything wrong. I want to rearrange your furniture. And how effective has that been? Any thoughts? Absolutely not effective.
So
Right, go ahead.
I don't think it would work. I wouldn't change anything.
Exactly. Like, I'm not doing anything. Like, what's the reason why my bowls can't be here? Right. You tell me why my television has to be there. Why? Because What's the problem you're trying to solve? Right? You're coming and telling me my house is organized wrong. I don't see a problem with it. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Right? We will often take our agile, which is a solution, not a goal, right? We often, because we're agile coaches, we see in this kind of tunnel of agile solves everything. And it's really easy to get wrapped up in this scenario that agile is the goal. We need to get to agile. You should be doing it like this and like this and like this and like this. Agile is not the goal. Agile is a partial solution to some of the client's business problems. Agile can be helpful. Scrum can be helpful. Scaling can be helpful. It's not always the right answer. And just because it worked somewhere else doesn't mean it's going to work here, right? Even if we take the same idea, the implementation of it may be very different here because there's a different system, right? And so one of the reasons why people resist is because you're solving problems they don't have, or solving problems they don't know they have, or solving problems that aren't the problem that is most important to them. Right? So let's be real for just a second. We've got an executive leadership team who is saying, my clients hate my product. My customers hate my product. I'm losing customers left and right. And as the coach, I'm harping on your daily scrum is 20 minutes. You should not be doing a daily scrum for 20 minutes. You should be asking these questions and you should be done in 15 minutes. And why are you not standing up? And your user story isn't in user story format. Tell me how that's going to make the clients like the product more. That's not the problem they're trying to solve. Yes, I can agree that a lot of those things put together help us move in a direction towards customer satisfaction, right? But it's not the thing that they're concerned about, right? And so if we're giving them solutions and they haven't identified the problem, then the solutions are useless to them, right? They're just doing what you told them to do to make you leave them alone. What's better is to understand the problems that they're having. What are the business problems? Team, what are the problems you're having? Right? Or are they having communication problems? Are they having clarity problems? Are they having quality problems? What is it? And great. So what do I have that might be helpful for that? What are some of the things in my Agile toolkit that might actually help you solve your quality problem? That might actually help you solve your communication problem. Right now, it makes sense that you're giving me this technique or this tool from Agile to implement because, oh, look, it actually solves this problem right here, rather than you should be doing these things because that's what Scrum says or what the Scrum Guide says or any of those other books that we like to say, here's what the book says. You're not doing it like the book. Let me tell you the reality of books, right? All these books that tell these stories about how things work, they are true in that this worked somewhere at some point. And so it's a good idea. I can guarantee you that none of those books did all of that stuff at all of their clients, and it always worked. Right? They take pieces of things that worked at different places and they put all the good ideas in the book together and say, here's something that makes sense. It's for us as coaches to be able to understand these are good ideas and they may or may not work and they won't look like they look in the book because this system over here is not the system that was designed in. And so we may actually implement it very differently. Right? Yes, this is why we love stories. They're inspiring. but they're not recipes, right? I don't bake. I don't bake for a reason because I don't follow recipes. I don't even read the recipe. I look at the picture and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to throw all these things in there and make that. I could never bake. Agile is not a recipe, right? Surichi, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about the example that you gave, which was really great example. Like someone comes, your neighbor comes and starts talking about why it is here, why the bowl is here, and that. In that case, I think neighbor visited our house just casually. We are not maybe hiring him or giving any specific authority to him, or we are not expecting anything from him, but still he is doing, which is weird. But in corporate world, I think if leadership is bringing in someone to make the change happen, so it's like we are already getting some kind of support from them, like yes, we would like to see that change in the organization. To what extent is different, how you are going to handle it, manage it, that's your problem. But then that is how I was thinking. I mean, I love the example, but there is a minor difference. Like in this case, it's all casual and he's just interfering with our personal life. So which is extremely difficult to accept. So I'm going to say this is my house. I am not going to let you decide everything. But in the organization, it's a leadership team. So and they may hire agile coaches by interviewing and going through some kind of expectations, like this is how we would like to transform our teams and these are our goals towards agility. So
Yeah.
can you please explain a little bit on that, how we can then use that support, and at the same time, of course, learning the problems is the best idea.
Yeah, and so where I think the connection between the example and this is you've got leadership saying, I want to make these changes, but the individual teams that you're working with did not invite you to make those changes, and you're trying to press changes on them, right? Without them understanding, well, what's the connection? Why do I need to do these things? Right. And that also happens at that middle layer of management a lot. Yeah, the leaders of the organization hired you. I didn't hire you. Why are you here trying to coach me? And often the coaching that people are doing is really just telling them what to do. My favorite is when agile coaches tell managers, you can't do anything. You shouldn't be telling the teams anything. You shouldn't be talking to the teams. You shouldn't be telling them what to do. You shouldn't be giving them solutions. But then the coach actually does all those things that they told the manager not to do. Right? Like, why can't the manager do it if you can? Right? What's the difference? Right? So one of the ways to help like get to that middle management, especially because often this is the biggest resistance area, is what's really important for them. Talk to them and find out, well, what are the problems that they have? What are their biggest problems? Maybe their biggest problem is figuring out how to balance all the work. Maybe their biggest problem is figuring out how to prioritize the work. Maybe their biggest problem is they don't have budget. Maybe their biggest problem is they don't have tools. Maybe their biggest problem is there's not enough trust in the organization, or they're afraid they're going to lose their job, or many other things, right? Find out what their concerns are and what things they need to be successful, right? If we're looking at things from the perspective of what I think you need, then that's what's going to make me successful as a coach. If we're looking at things from the perspective of what is going to make you as an employee successful, and we help them to resolve those things, then they won't resist us. Right? They will be like, yes, you're actually here for my benefit, not for your benefit. You're not here as a spy. You're not here to get me fired, right? You're actually here to help me be successful. And so building that relationship with them and actually focusing on what they think is important helps to break down that resistance. And the things that you think are important, a lot of times those solutions are exactly what they need, but they've identified the problem and now your solution makes sense. And then for the things that don't directly connect to their problem, as their problems get out the way and they get resolved, your stuff is going to rise to the surface, right? And so you've got to deal with what's presenting before you can actually make big change, right? Other changes, right? And so the biggest answer that I give when people say, how do we deal with resistance is this: stop creating it, right? People often resist you. Sometimes they resist change, and we need to dig into why are they resistant to change? What's behind that, right? Is it fear? Is it they don't understand? Is it lack of clarity? Is it nobody communicated? All those things that we mentioned in the very beginning. And if those are the case, then solve those problems so that they don't feel resistant to change itself. And if it is that the way we're approaching change is what's offending them, then we need to change the way we actually approach change, right? So that we can build partnerships. And what worked with one client won't necessarily work with another. I worked in an organization where I was working with one part of the organization, and I was interacting with them in ways that definitely worked for them, and they were making progress and moving forward. And then I went to work with a different part of the organization, which had a completely different culture. And I made the mistake of just like thinking, well, this is the same company, so I'm just going to continue the way I've been interacting. Well, when I did that, immediately I got shut down. Like nobody wanted to talk to me. They didn't want anything to do with me. They were like brick wall, like, who said that we wanted your help? Right. And so I had to kind of pedal back a bit and say, okay, hold on. What am I doing wrong here? Right. And I had to start paying attention to them and what they were doing. And I actually had to, I had to look and say, well, who's kind of the leader of the pack? The informal leader of the pack, right? And then I had to go to him and say, look, I'm sorry. I did not, like, I came across completely wrong. Can we start over? Right. And had to talk about, like, I'm here to actually help you, not to fix you, right? And so how can we build a partnership? What are your problems, right? How can I be a partner to you? And I had to slow down and build that relationship with him and understand their perspective before I could actually get in and help. Had I done that to begin with, I wouldn't have had, it would have been much quicker because I wouldn't have had all the resistance to deal with, right? Another piece here is about being able to break down resistance is that again, it's kind of human nature, right? So I know you've probably mostly heard of there's like resistors or laggards, there's early adopters, right? And then there's this group in the middle, right? And so when we're trying to help organizations affect change, and then there's this group of resistors who don't want to make the change, it's almost human nature to go be like, I'm going to go fix these people. I'm going to go push on these people. They're getting in the way. They're slowing everybody down. They're messing everything up, right? And we want to go try to see what we can do to get them to get in line. So a bit about how change in organizations work is really important to understand here, right? Because you've got the few, 10, 15% who are like, yes, we're ready to go. And you've got the 15, 20% who are like, we're not doing nothing. But then everybody else in the middle, what they're doing is they're watching to decide what they need to do and if they need to do it. So they're listening for what's happening. They're watching and seeing what's happening, right? They're looking for, is this a bad thing or is this a good thing? So what happens when we go and deal with the resistors and we try to force them into compliance? They make noise and they push back and they resist more. And what happens is all these people in the middle, they're like, oh, this must be a bad thing because I'm only hearing bad stuff. I'm hearing people complain. I'm hearing people mad. I'm hearing how this doesn't work. I'm hearing how they're forced to do things that don't make sense. And so these people in the middle, you create a negative momentum, which starts to drive the people in the middle more towards resistance. And so I think a better way is to create positive momentum. If people are resisting, let them resist, give them time, leave them alone. You've got too many people who want to work with you and who want to learn and who want to grow and who want to do a good job to waste your energy on the 20% who don't, right? And so if you focus on the ones who do want to make change, what will happen is those are the people who are willing to make mistakes. Those are the people who are willing to experiment. They're the ones who are willing to like get all of the bad stuff and sort through it and fix it, right? And say, okay, here's what works, here's what doesn't work. And they're going to be excited about any improvements that happen. So there's going to be a lot of noise around this is what we accomplished. This is what we did. Man, we ran into this big thing and this is how we figured it out. And so the noise and the energy is going to be more on the side of this is a good thing. And so that helps to take those people in the middle and push them over to it's a good thing, right? They start to feel safe. They're like, oh, yeah, maybe this is good. Hey, I wonder how that team's getting that done and we can't get that done, right? And they'll start pulling over to that side and learning, right? Where I learned this was when I used to run operations in a bank, and they would basically take the departments that were failing and they would put them under me so that I could get them fixed. And so one great example of this was I inherited a department who like they were mad, every single one of them. There was like 20 people in the department and they were mad because the bank had fired their boss and put him under me. And they were like not wanting anything to do with me. And I said, you know what? This whole department, there were 3 managers, there were like 20 employees, and all of them had the attitude that they weren't doing anything I said. And I said, not a problem. And I just left them alone. And I went and found somebody in one of my other departments who liked to learn, who liked to solve problems, who had a great attitude, and who actually wanted to learn some new skills. And I moved her into that department, and her and I worked together and figured out how to do things and figured out how to improve things. And she was making fantastic progress, and none of them were making any progress on their work. And so as she started making progress, they were like, what in the world are you doing? How are you getting that? I mean, it took a few weeks, maybe a month and a half. But eventually people were like, how in the world are you getting this stuff done? We can't figure out how to get this. We can't get these things done. And so she was like, oh, this. And eventually all of the people in the department came over to the dark side, except for the managers who quit. And that was fine too. Right. And so this is how I learned this, right? Jean?
Yeah, I'm going to selfishly use the right to ask the question. I pinned something in the chat. Maybe you can quickly pop it open. I'll paraphrase it. This is my favorite phrase that I use when I feel that I can't explain why someone is putting up resistance. It's from Upton Sinclair. Paraphrasing, it's hard to make a man, or woman for that matter, believe or understand something when their salary, when their compensation depends on not understanding it, and therefore resistance.
So when their salary depends on not understanding, right?
Essentially, yeah. Like when whatever you tell me is great. I love hearing it, but if I buy into what you're saying, essentially it will cost me something.
Mm,
I want
yes.
to see if you have any perspective on this, because this does not always apply, but and sometimes at least in my line of work, I get to bump into this.
Yeah, I think there are some cases where it absolutely is truth. And there's many cases where there's an assumption that that is true and it's not. Like, for example, I think this happens a lot in adopting Agile, like with project managers and even middle managers of, well, I've been doing this my whole career and I'm successful and I've been command and control or whatever it is, and this has actually made me successful, right? And so if I do what you're doing, then I'm not going to be successful anymore. And so I think a lot of it is assumed, right? Just like people assume we can't do something, right? We can't just ask for forgiveness. We've got to ask for permission, right? And so some of that is assumption, and some of it may be truth, and some of it may be their own truth, because this is what I want to do. I want to do it this way, right? But I think there's a bigger question here of, is the culture of the company ready to actually change, right? Because you've got, for example, some companies where it's got a toxic culture, right? And the people who are the arrogant jerks, right? They're the ones getting promotions. And so for other people to start adopting different behaviors, they're like, well, no, that's not how you get ahead in this company. I was at a company one time where there was, it was this exact culture, right? People who were jerks they got promoted. There was one guy who actually got in my face and I thought he was going to punch me, right? And I was like, dude, and he had done this to multiple people and he got promoted. And I was like, this is not the right company for me to be at. So I'm going to go. Right. And so yeah, I think some of it's perception, some of it's assumption, some of it is reality. Right. And if it's reality, then we need to look at the bigger systemic picture of, like, does this company actually want to change, or am I wasting my time here? Right. Good question. So a couple of other hints on helping with resistance, especially in the higher levels, right, is we want to focus on outcomes, not outputs, right? And we want to help them to see what's the end game, right? When we focus on you've got to do this and this and this because Agile said it, you've got to have these story points and these meetings and all these other things. This is behaviors, right? We need to start thinking about why and what it is we're trying to get out of it. We also need to think about business results, right? We've got to be careful about, as coaches, we might have a tendency to live in a single space that's like, some people are like, I care about technology, I care about quality. Others are, I care about people and people being happy and all that stuff. And you will get resistance from the managers if you live in this space of, can't we all get along and kumbaya and everybody's happy and we have birthday parties. When the leaders of the organization are like, we're bleeding money, I'm trying to save people's jobs. I don't really care at this moment if everybody's having a party. We need to make money or nobody's going to be happy, right? And so we have to understand that it's a balance. We've got to get business results. Part of the way we get business results is through all these other things, but we've got to be able to look at outcomes and how do we know we're actually making impact. When funds get low and the company has to make decisions about, like, who do we keep and who do we not keep and how do we cut back, coaches often are the first ones to go. Why? Because nobody knows the value, right? The managers are like, what do they do all day? They walk around and talk to people. We don't know what value they're providing, right? And so in order to focus on outcomes, our change efforts have to be measurable. What is it? What is the problem we're trying to solve? Where are we trying to get to, right? And what are the things we're doing, right? And so if this is the problem I have, we think if we do this, then we're going to get this result. So do that, right? Have a baseline measurement and then come back and measure again, right? We will measure this in 3 months and then again in 6 months, right? So that you can start to see the change that's happening, right? And as people can see that these changes, these experiments that you're doing, they're connected to actual problems, and there is data that shows that the problem is getting better, right? Now there's a reason to actually buy in because it's concrete. It's not just somebody's word. It's like, yes, we had this many things, errors, incidences, phone calls, whatever it was, complaints. We did an experiment, and we think if we make this change, then this is what's going to happen. And we measured that over time, and look, the rate is improving, right? And so now you've got real data that helps people to say, yes, this is worth doing. Yes, this could actually be working, right? We also have to recognize that we're in complex environments, right? We're not in simple environments where everything has a simple answer. Here's one problem, one solution, cause and effect. That's not the world we live in. The world we live in is there's a presenting problem, and that's not really the problem. The problem that is presenting is a symptom of other problems. And every problem that we have is usually a blend of multiple problems, right? And then we see this thing presenting on the outside, and it rarely will have a single solution. It is usually a blend of multiple problems, multiple solutions, and multiple experiments. That's why organizational change is so hard. And adopting agile is organizational change. We're trying to change the culture. We're trying to change the technology systems. We're trying to change the political systems. We're trying to change the process systems. We're trying to change the mindset systems, right? There's a lot happening. And so we have to recognize that there's a lot, right? A lot going on. For us, it may seem like one thing, adopt agile. To them, it's hundreds, maybe thousands of changes, right? And so people need to be able to see, here are the results of the experiments we're doing. And they have to be able to see and say, well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. Or that worked partially. What else can we do to get to where we want to be? Right. And so this is a great way of doing that. And I think the last thing really for coaches that can be helpful to you is to recognize that we are not responsible for the client's change. We can't change anybody. You can't change the way people think. You can't change what people believe. You can't change what people do. Only they can do that. And that's why we have to be partners with them, right? They have to make the decisions that they're going to live with. If we go back to I come to your house and I tell you how to clean it up, even if I go to your house and you tell me it's really dirty and it's cluttered and it's a mess in here and I don't know what to do. If I tell you, here's how you solve it, well, chances are you're going to be like, I tried that, right? It doesn't work, right? Or even if I give you a solution you haven't done before, there's not going to be a lot of, oh, yes, I'm going to go do that. I'm totally committed. Sometimes there is, because it's like, yes, that's the perfect solution. But often it's like, okay, I'm going to go do what you told me to do. But if you work with them to say, let's understand the problem, let's understand some options, let's understand some solutions, how are you going to implement them? And they come up with the plan. Well, now they're invested, right? If you tell me, well, this is how I'm going to get my house organized. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to organize it like this. You are going to be more motivated to do it. And then if you know I'm coming over in 2 days and you haven't done it yet, you're going to be like, oh crap, I probably need to get this done because I said I was going to do it, right? And you don't want to be like declaring that I'm going to do things and then you're not even doing your own ideas, right? So there's more motivation there to get it done because it was what you said, But if I had told you to do it and I was coming over in 2 days, you could be like, yeah, well, didn't get it done because it wasn't my priority, right? It's a whole different way of thinking when you come up with a solution that you want to implement. You're more invested. And then if the solution doesn't work, you're also more invested to say, let me shift that. Where if I come up with the solution, if it doesn't work, you're like, oh, well, didn't work. What's your next solution? Right. And so we want to build in this independence from the coach so that they can actually learn to make their own decisions and their own change and keep that going. Right. And so I know we've got about 5 minutes left. Jean, I want to hand this back over to you to handle whatever you want to do in the last 5 minutes. I'm happy to answer a couple of questions or however you close.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. This has been amazing. Borderlining with just great. Thank you from my end. I don't want to take all 5 minutes. In fact, I would like to give this back to the group. Folks, there's your last chance to ask maybe another question or two. We shall stop on the hour, but the only thing I will say that all of the information that Cherie has shared today, including the deck and perhaps some of the information about her programs, coaching programs, I will be sharing later on with everyone. For now, please ask another question if you have
Yeah,
any.
Sean?
I'm curious. So say you're working with a team that has had more compliance focused approach, a coach who has a more compliance focused approach. So you're coming into an organization that may have some bad blood about, hey, I know what agile coaches do, I know what coaches do, and we don't like that. Any additional recommendations to kind of build that trust on top of what the several points you've already defined?
Yeah, that happens a lot. Right. Yeah, that we hate coaches. We won't even use the word agile because it's terrible. I would say spend the first however long it takes just building relationships. Hey, I just want to hear what's going on. Don't have any solutions. Don't give input, right? Unless they ask for it. Take people to go have coffee, talk about their kids, talk about their pets, right? Their sports team. Build a relationship that builds trust with individuals, right? And then as they trust you, they'll want to hear more, right? And feel free to like share stories like, oh yeah, yeah, that happened at this other place and they did this, right? And just like give them a reason to want to pull from you, right? But just be you. Don't try to sell it. Build a relationship because relationships have to come first for them to believe that you actually care about them, right? John Maxwell has a saying about people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so that's got to be key.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Sean, for this question. And let's consider this as a closing question because we're really I'm out of time. So thank you once again. Cherie, personally, I would like to thank you for coming out and doing this for the audience, for the community. This has been a great talk. And some questions that were asked that were also very good questions. At this point, I would like to wrap this up. On this note, I would like to thank everyone for joining, and please be on the lookout for the recording that we will be sharing with everyone. And if you think of anyone within the organization who could benefit from it, please pass it along once you have it. With that, I would like to close and once again thank everyone and wish everyone a good the rest of the working day on Friday and good holiday, good weekend.
Alrighty. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Once again.
Bye.
Bye.